Welcome to the Cyber Center for Biblical Studies. Hi, my name is Herb Bateman. Today we want to review a book entitled Biblical Leadership, edited by Forrest and Chet Roden. Today we have with us Pastor Jeremy Wike, pastor of Community of Hope Church in Columbia City in northern Indiana. Jeremy, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right, well, tell me about this book. What is the thesis of this book on biblical leadership?
The thesis is that there's a lot of books in the Christian world that talk about leadership, and many times they're cherry-picking verses or stories out of the Bible, but this was an attempt to gather a lot of contributors to look at theologically what does the Bible itself say about leadership. And as you read the book, you realize the Bible actually says a whole lot about leadership, and so they're looking at it theologically from beginning to end.
Okay, so how do they develop this thesis? As you work your way through this book, what can a reader expect from this book?
Yeah, each contributor, there's 33 different chapters, and each contributor was able to take a different section of from beginning to end of the Old Testament, and they were able to develop within various books of the particular biblical text, and they all were ad hoc, but they were all extracting these biblical leadership principles. And each chapter really easy to follow and read because they're only about 10 to 20 pages each, and so really easy to follow, and you can do it in multiple sittings. And what you really find is that there's a lot there, but the way that it is packaged is really reader friendly.
Okay, because I was going to say, wow, 33 chapters, that sounds like an awful long book. So it turns out to be about a 400-page book, I take it then.
Correct, something like that.
Okay. What spurred you on to want to read this book? What was it that caught your attention, that caused you to want to sit down and read this book?
Well, I'm familiar with a lot of the resources on leadership, and being a pastor myself, we obviously know that leadership is necessary in the church, but there aren't a lot of books that actually look at the biblical text itself. And so this was a bit of a unique book in that sense, and I thought I would go back to the text itself and learn about it, and I'm really glad that I did.
Good. You know, a lot of times we read a book and there's always one or two things that stand out that it was like very insightful. It was like a wow moment. Wow, it really rings true, or wow, I never realized that. Did you have any of those? Was there anything in the book that struck you as being extremely insightful that was like a wow moment for you?
I did. I had a few, but one I'll share was Robert Wayne Stacy's chapter on Jesus and the Kingdom of God, leadership in the Synoptic Gospels, and he's working from this premise that Jesus was deliberately and painstakingly trying to demonstrate to his disciples that the values of the Kingdom of God are not like the values of the world, that power is different in the Kingdom of God than it is in the world. And he makes the point that Jesus didn't call leaders. Jesus actually called followers. And he calls leaders in the church first followers. And these leaders are to be exemplified not ontologically with the virtues and things that they possess within themselves. They're not to be exemplified methodologically, learning the skills, but rather what he calls teleologically. And that is understanding the ways of the Kingdom of God and having this vision of what the Kingdom of God looks like and defining our leadership as first followers within the Kingdom of God. And I thought very insightful, and as a pastor, it really made me stop and meditate and think about how I pastor in light of the Kingdom of God.
Very good. Now this is a rather lengthy book, 400 pages or so. And authors wish they could always add something else. And sometimes a reader will read a book and say, boy, I wish they would have covered this or that. When you finished reading this book, did you have that sense? Was there anything that you wish they had covered that they didn't cover?
I didn't feel that way. I felt like they were very thorough and holistic, and I think the task was to exegete the text the task was not exegeting our culture and trying to apply leadership principles. I think that was part of the stated purpose there. And so I read it and I felt like there was a lot of fodder for developing leaders in our church, lay and staff leaders, and for myself to go and just use for leadership development tools and for sermon preparation and whatnot. I did not have that feeling. I thought it was very thorough and comprehensive, and really appreciated the contribution this book made in the field of biblical leadership.
Very good. Now, you've already mentioned this, but I'll throw it out. Raise this question again. When you think about this book and biblical leadership, and you mentioned that they really stick to the text, and they're looking at biblical leadership through theological lenses and what the Bible has to say. And I know you mentioned a lot of leadership books tend not to do that. Are there any that stand out in your mind that come close to this, or is this approach so unique that from your perspective that there's none that come close to this?
From my perspective, I'm not aware of one, if there is. And these authors, they're very clearly stating that the Bible is not primarily a leadership book. And they're very clear about that, and so they are trying to extract what it does say about the text. And I think that may be why there aren't too many like this. And so from my knowledge, it is one of a kind. It's a unique niche in the realm of biblical leadership.
Very good. Jeremy, thank you so much.
And
thank you for joining us. And for those of you that are in leadership positions and looking for information on how do I go about training leaders, perhaps this will be a book to consider. In the meantime, I trust that you will walk with the King and be a blessing to all those that you come in contact with. Thank you.